Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. These words from Marcus Aurelius hold a subtle yet profound power. They remind us that the most influential people are those who act with integrity, not those who seek to impose their will on others. In a world driven by noise, force, and constant competition for attention, what if the secret to getting what you want wasn't about pushing harder, but rather about pulling back? Today, we're diving into the art of subtle influence, a timeless practice inspired by Stoic wisdom. It's an approach rooted in patience, self-control, and the understanding that true power lies in mastering yourself first. Whether you're navigating relationships, advancing your career, or facing personal challenges, this philosophy offers tools that are not only practical but transformative. Stick with me, because by the end of this journey, you might just see influence in a way you never have before. Imagine a ship caught in a fierce storm. The waves crash violently, the sky is dark, and panic spreads among the crew. But amidst the chaos, the captain remains calm. He focuses not on controlling the storm, which is far beyond his power, but on steering the ship through it. His perspective transforms a moment of fear into one of calculated action. This is the essence of Stoicism, the power of perspective. We may not always be able to change our circumstances, but we can always change how we see them. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." At its core, Stoicism teaches us that our perception of events shapes our reality far more than the events themselves. While others may see obstacles or conflict as insurmountable, the Stoic reframes them as opportunities to grow, to adapt, and to influence not through force but through clarity of thought. Let's take a real-world example. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and author of *Man's Search for Meaning*. Though he endured unimaginable suffering in concentration camps, he found strength by reframing his situation. Frankl realized that while he couldn't control the brutal conditions around him, he still had the power to choose his response. He focused on finding meaning in his suffering, which gave him the mental strength to persevere. By shifting his perspective, he turned an experience of despair into a testament of resilience, influencing not only his own survival but the millions inspired by his story. Reframing is a powerful form of influence because it begins internally. When you change how you perceive a situation, you naturally exude confidence and composure, which can shift the dynamic for others without a single word. For example, think of a workplace disagreement. One person may see it as an argument that must be won. A Stoic, however, might reframe it as a chance to understand their colleague's perspective, finding common ground instead of escalating tension. By changing their focus from conflict to collaboration, they subtly guide the outcome in a more constructive direction. This principle applies not only in grand, life-changing scenarios, but also in everyday moments. Imagine being stuck in traffic after a long day. Is it a source of frustration, stealing your time and peace? Or is it a rare chance to pause, reflect, or even listen to that podcast you've been meaning to catch up on? The circumstance hasn't changed, but your experience has, purely because of how you've reframed it. The true power of perspective isn't just in how it benefits you, but in how it influences those around you. People are drawn to calm amidst chaos, to solutions that rise above problems. When you reframe challenges into opportunities, you not only empower yourself but inspire others to do the same. And here's where the real magic happens. Shifting your perspective has a ripple effect. Like the captain steadying the ship in the storm, your clarity can influence the emotions and actions of others, showing them that control doesn't come from dominating a situation, but from mastering your perception of it. This is freedom, this is power, or as Epictetus might say, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. So, the next time you face difficulty, ask yourself, how am I seeing this? What would happen if I looked at it differently? Start there, and you'll find that the power of perspective isn't just about surviving life's storms, it's about steering your ship toward calmer seas. Let's build on this idea of perspective by exploring a foundational Stoic concept, the distinction between control and influence. At the heart of Stoicism lies a simple yet profound truth. There are things we can control and there are things we cannot. Epictetus expressed this clearly when he said, "Some things are up to us and some are not." It sounds obvious, right? Yet, how often do we find ourselves frustrated, anxious, or even angry over things entirely outside our control? The actions of others, the outcomes of events, or even the weather, these are all external forces we cannot dictate. But within this distinction lies a powerful realization. While we can't control what's outside of us, we can always control what's within: our thoughts, our actions, our responses. This is where influence comes into play. Influence doesn't come from trying to bend others to your will or manipulate situations to your liking. It arises naturally when you master yourself. When you focus on governing your own emotions, attitudes, and behaviors, you become a source of stability and clarity, a rare commodity in a world full of chaos and reactivity. And people are drawn to that. They're influenced by it without you ever needing to force your hand. Here's an example. Imagine you're in a meeting where tempers are flaring. People are interrupting each other, voices are rising, and the tension is palpable. Now, you can't control how others behave in that room, but you can control yourself. Instead of matching the chaos or trying to dominate the conversation, you choose to remain calm, to listen carefully, and to speak only when you have something thoughtful to contribute. What happens? Your calmness becomes contagious. Slowly, others begin to lower their voices, mirroring your measured tone. Without demanding it, you've shifted the dynamic. Your control over your own behavior has quietly influenced the behavior of others. This is the essence of the Stoic approach. Influence isn't about commanding or controlling, it's about leading by example. When you embody the qualities you wish to see in others: patience, clarity, resilience, you create an environment where those same qualities can emerge in those around you. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't force the seeds to grow. You simply provide the right conditions: water, sunlight, good soil, and trust the natural process to unfold. Let's take it a step further. Have you ever noticed how people often feed off each other's energy? A stressed-out coworker can make an entire office tense. A driver honking angrily in traffic can spark a cascade of frustration. But just as negativity spreads, so does calmness and composure. The next time you find yourself in a difficult situation, try this. Instead of reacting impulsively, pause. Take a deep breath, center yourself. Not only will you feel more grounded, but you'll likely notice a shift in how others respond to you. Your decision to control your own state creates a ripple effect, subtly influencing the environment without any direct effort to do so. The key is to recognize that while control is limited to yourself, your influence extends far beyond. It's not about imposing your will on others. It's about mastering your own responses so effectively that others are drawn to follow your lead. As Marcus Aurelius put it, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. When you embody the traits you value, you don't need to coerce or convince. Your presence becomes the proof, and your influence speaks for itself. So, as you go about your day, ask yourself, am I focused on controlling the uncontrollable, or am I channeling my energy into mastering what's within my power, my thoughts, my choices, my actions? When you shift your focus inward, influence flows outward naturally. No force, no struggle, just the quiet yet undeniable power of self-mastery. Patience, in its quiet strength, is one of the most overlooked yet powerful forms of influence. While the world often glorifies immediate action, instant gratification, and decisive power plays, the Stoics remind us of the virtue of waiting, of enduring with grace, and choosing the right moment to act. Seneca once wrote, "Time discovers truth." This simple statement holds an incredible lesson. Not everything can be rushed. Some things, especially those of real value, require patience to fully unfold. In the Stoic tradition, patience isn't about passivity or inaction. It's an active choice, a deliberate skill that allows us to endure hardship, resist impulsiveness, and seize the right opportunity when the time comes. Imagine a farmer planting crops. They cannot force the seeds to grow overnight. They prepare the soil, water the plants, and trust the process of nature. Acting too early, reaping before the crop has matured, yields nothing. Acting too late, letting the crop wither, results in waste. The farmer's success lies in knowing when to wait and when to act. This is the essence of patience as a form of influence. Timing matters more than sheer force. How often have we allowed impatience to weaken our position or strain our relationships? Think about a heated argument, for example. Impatience might lead us to interrupt, to push, to win the conversation, or to demand immediate answers. In doing so, we often escalate conflicts instead of resolving them. But what if instead we paused? What if we listened without rushing to respond, allowing the other person to feel heard? That moment of restraint, of patient silence, can speak volumes. It diffuses tension and opens the door to understanding, a far more effective influence than raising one's voice ever could be. Now, let's look at this idea through the lens of enduring hardship. Life is filled with difficulties, failed plans, delayed goals, unexpected setbacks. Impatience leads to frustration, anger, and even giving up. But the Stoics remind us that enduring challenges with patience builds strength. Take the story of Thomas Edison. When asked about his countless failed attempts to invent the light bulb, he famously replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Edison's perseverance wasn't blind ambition. It was rooted in patience. He trusted that his efforts, given enough time, would bear fruit, and they did. Patience also allows us to influence outcomes by creating space for things to align naturally. Consider professional negotiations. A seasoned negotiator understands that silence can be more powerful than words. Speaking or acting too quickly can weaken their position, while waiting, letting the other party fill the silence, can reveal valuable insights or create a more favorable deal. Here, patience is not just a virtue, it's a strategy. But patience isn't always easy, is it? In an age where everything moves at the speed of a tap or a swipe, waiting can feel like falling behind. Yet, paradoxically, it's often those who slow down, who resist the urge to rush, that end up ahead. Ask yourself this: how many times has impatience cost you something valuable, a relationship, an opportunity, or even your peace of mind? And what might have been different if you had waited just a little longer for the right moment? Patience teaches us that influence doesn't always come from doing. Sometimes the most profound impact comes from holding back, enduring discomfort, or simply giving things the time they need to mature. As Marcus Aurelius said, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." Patience sharpens those weapons: reason, calm, clarity, and reminds us that enduring now often leads to greater success later. So, the next time you feel the pull of impatience, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting too soon? Is this a moment to endure, to wait, to let the situation unfold on its own? In mastering patience, you'll find not only greater peace, but also the quiet yet profound ability to influence those around you without forcing a single thing. True power, after all, often lies in restraint. Picture this: you're in the middle of a chaotic workplace scenario. A deadline is looming, tension is running high, and emotions are spilling over. Team members are pointing fingers, voices are rising, and the entire atmosphere feels on the verge of collapse. Everyone is caught in the storm except for one person. Perhaps it's you. You choose to stay calm, listening intently, speaking thoughtfully, and offering solutions instead of contributing to the frenzy. Before long, the energy in the room begins to shift. One by one, others start lowering their voices, following your lead, and focusing on resolving the problem rather than fueling the chaos. This is the understated power of calmness in action. It's not about ignoring the problem or pretending stress doesn't exist. Rather, it's about embodying inner tranquility in a way that stabilizes those around you. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, faced unimaginable pressures ruling an empire, yet he wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus understood that remaining calm amid chaos is a source of strength, not just for ourselves, but for those who look to us for guidance. Calmness is magnetic. In moments of stress, people instinctively gravitate toward stability. When you remain composed, you communicate without words that there's no need to panic, that solutions are within reach, and that you're in control of yourself, even if nothing else is. This quiet confidence has a ripple effect. Much like a pebble dropped into turbulent water, your steady presence begins to smooth out the ripples of others' emotions. Without forcing or demanding anything, you shift the energy of the entire situation. Now, why does this work? First, calmness builds trust. When things go wrong, people naturally look for someone to anchor them. Someone unshaken by the storm. When you consistently show composure under pressure, you become that anchor, and others instinctively trust your judgment and follow your direction. Second, calmness enables clarity. While everyone else is swept up in knee-jerk reactions, you can think clearly, assess the situation, and make better decisions. This clarity is not only valuable for solving problems, but also for inspiring confidence in others. Let's revisit the workplace example. Imagine a team leader who matches the stress of their team by yelling about missed deadlines or demanding results through panic. What happens? The tension spreads, mistakes multiply, and morale plummets. Now contrast that with a leader who stays calm, acknowledges the problem, and calmly lays out a plan of action. "Here's what we're going to do next," they might say with a steady tone. Even if the problem isn't solved immediately, the team feels reassured. They respond better, work more effectively, and feel capable of turning things around. But embodying calmness isn't just a tool for influencing others. It's deeply beneficial for your own well-being. Stoicism teaches us that chaos and stress are inevitable in life, but how we respond to them defines our experience. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. When you maintain composure, you protect yourself from being consumed by external turbulence, and by doing so, you stay in a position of strength, capable of guiding not only yourself but also others. So, how can you cultivate this calmness? Start by practicing mindfulness in stressful moments. When things start to spiral, pause for a moment to check in with yourself. Take a deep breath, remind yourself of what you can and cannot control, and focus on the next actionable step rather than the entire problem at once. Over time, this habit becomes second nature, allowing you to remain composed even in the most challenging situations. Ultimately, embodying calmness isn't about pretending to have all the answers or suppressing your emotions. It's about cultivating a grounded presence that allows you to navigate chaos, and in doing so, inspire others to do the same. Calmness is leadership, it's influence. And in a world often ruled by reactive behavior, it's one of the rarest and most powerful qualities you can possess. There's a story about Mahatma Gandhi that beautifully illustrates the power of leading by example. A mother had traveled a great distance with her young son to ask Gandhi for advice. She was desperate for him to stop eating sugar as it was affecting his health. When she finally reached Gandhi, he listened carefully to her request but then asked her to return in 2 weeks. Confused but trusting his wisdom, she agreed. 2 weeks later, she returned with her son, and this time Gandhi simply told the boy, "Stop eating sugar." Puzzled, the mother asked why he couldn't have said that during their first meeting. Gandhi smiled and responded, "2 weeks ago I was eating sugar myself." This anecdote demonstrates a principle that is at the heart of Stoicism. Actions speak louder than words. Influence is not about telling people what to do but showing them how to live. Gandhi understood that to make a meaningful impact on others, he first had to align his own actions with his message. Without that alignment, words become hollow and influence becomes brittle. The Stoic philosopher Seneca expressed a similar idea when he wrote, "Let us not say one thing and do another. Let our lives speak the same language as our speech." In short, your actions are your most powerful form of communication. They are what people truly notice, trust, and follow. Words may inspire in the moment, but consistent actions inspire over time. They demonstrate integrity and reliability, qualities that naturally draw others to you. Think about a leader or role model you admire. Chances are, it's not just their speeches or promises that left an impression on you, but the way they consistently embody the values they stand for. Imagine an athlete who preaches discipline but skips training, or a manager who talks about teamwork yet undermines their team. Their words lose credibility because their actions don't align. Now contrast that with someone whose actions and values are inseparable. Perhaps it's a mentor who leads with compassion and fairness in every decision. Or a colleague who works tirelessly alongside their team, demonstrating the effort they expect from others. These are the people who influence us not through authority, but through example. Leading by example doesn't require grand gestures. It's the small, consistent behaviors that build trust and credibility. Are you the type of person who shows up on time, follows through on promises, and treats others with respect, even when no one's watching? These simple acts create a foundation of integrity that others notice, even if they don't say it outright. Over time, this quiet consistency has a greater impact than any motivational speech or persuasive argument could ever achieve. Take parenting as another example. Children often mimic what their parents do rather than what their parents say. A parent might tell their kids to be kind, but if they're constantly speaking harshly to others, the lesson is lost. Similarly, a business leader can talk endlessly about innovation, but if they're unwilling to take risks or embrace change themselves, their team will likely resist doing so too. The message is clear. People learn more from what they observe in your behavior than from what they hear in your words. Leading by example is equally powerful when it comes to personal growth. If you want to inspire others to pursue their goals, focus on pursuing your own. If you value patience, practice it in your daily interactions. If you believe in resilience, demonstrate it during challenges. Instead of attempting to convince others to change or grow, live your values so consistently that your example becomes the proof that it's possible. You don't need to seek recognition for this approach. In fact, much of its power lies in its humility. Like a flame that lights other candles without diminishing its own glow, leading by example is about quietly influencing others through the strength of your character. So, the next time you're tempted to tell someone else how they should act, pause and ask yourself, am I leading by example? Am I living in a way that aligns with the values I wish to inspire in others? After all, as Seneca reminds us, integrity isn't about appearances. It's about the harmony between what we say and what we do. Let's talk about empathy, not just as a way to connect with others, but as a cornerstone of true influence. At first glance, empathy might seem like an emotional quality, and you might wonder how it ties into the rational teachings of Stoicism. But the Stoics understood that empathy is not just about feeling, it's about understanding. It's about stepping into someone else's perspective, grasping their experiences, and recognizing their humanity. By doing so, we build bridges of trust and respect, which are far more effective at influencing others than manipulation or force ever could be. Marcus Aurelius captured this beautifully when he wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize?" This quote highlights something profound: the ability to see others not as obstacles or adversaries, but as fellow humans navigating the same struggles we all share. When we approach others from this perspective, we stop seeing them as problems to solve or opponents to defeat, and instead recognize them as rational beings, capable of their own thoughts, feelings, and decisions. This shift in mindset not only fosters understanding but also lays the foundation for authentic influence. Empathy, when paired with Stoic principles, doesn't mean blindly agreeing with others or excusing harmful behavior. Instead, it's about seeking to understand what drives someone's actions even when they frustrate us. Imagine a coworker who always seems uncooperative. At first, it's easy to label them as difficult or stubborn, but with empathy, you might discover that their resistance stems from fear of failure, or fear that their voice isn't being heard. Recognizing this doesn't mean you accept their behavior, but it does allow you to approach the situation differently. Instead of responding with frustration, you might reassure them or give them an opportunity to express their concerns. This approach doesn't force them to change, it invites them to. Understanding others' perspectives also allows us to communicate more effectively. Think about it: if you truly understand where someone is coming from, what they value, what they fear, what motivates them, you can frame your ideas in a way that resonates with them. Instead of imposing your viewpoint, you align with their perspective, making them feel seen and valued. This alignment opens the door to collaboration, where influence grows naturally because people feel understood rather than coerced. Take an example from history. Abraham Lincoln, often regarded as one of the greatest leaders, was known for his extraordinary empathy. During the Civil War, he maintained a practice of listening to those who opposed him, even inviting critics into dialogue. He didn't see them as enemies. He sought to understand their grievances, even when he strongly disagreed. This empathy didn't weaken his resolve, it strengthened his ability to unite a deeply divided nation. His influence wasn't rooted in forcing others to comply, but in understanding them so well that he could guide them toward a shared purpose. Empathy also ties into the Stoic principle of treating others as rational beings. The Stoics believed that humans are driven by reason, even when it seems like emotions are in control. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on this idea, reminding himself to respond to people with compassion rather than frustration. He wrote, "If someone is mistaken, instruct them kindly and show them their error. If you cannot, then blame yourself or no one." This advice is a reminder that every interaction is an opportunity to teach or learn, not to judge or condemn. By treating others as reasoning individuals, even when we disagree, we pave the way for understanding and influence that is built on respect rather than dominance. So, how do we cultivate empathy in daily life? It starts with listening, truly listening. Instead of planning your rebuttal while someone is speaking, try to understand not just their words but their emotions and motivations. Ask yourself, what might they be feeling? What experiences might have led them to this perspective? This isn't always easy, especially in moments of conflict. but the effort pays dividends in building trust and deepening relationships. Empathy, when combined with Stoic reasoning, becomes a tool of quiet influence. It allows us to connect with others on a human level, free from judgment or hostility. Through empathy, we create space for understanding, collaboration, and mutual respect. And in doing so, we embody one of the most powerful forms of influence, not by forcing others to change, but by inspiring them to see things differently. Let's explore one of the most transformative tools in Stoicism, emotional detachment. Now, before we dive in, let's clarify what this actually means. Emotional detachment isn't about suppressing your feelings or becoming cold and indifferent. It's about creating space between your emotions and your actions, a buffer that allows you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Think of it as stepping back from the tidal wave of emotion that often sweeps us up, so you can see the situation with greater clarity and composure. And this skill, when mastered, is a game changer for influencing others and shaping outcomes. The reason emotional detachment is so powerful lies in how our emotions often hijack our ability to think clearly. Imagine you've just received harsh criticism at work. Without detachment, you might immediately react defensively, maybe snapping back, shutting down, or even taking the feedback personally when it's not meant to be. These reactions not only erode relationships but also weaken your ability to handle the situation effectively. Now, contrast that with someone who can pause, recognize the initial sting of the criticism, and then choose how to respond. They might ask clarifying questions, assess whether there's truth to the feedback, and respond in a way that strengthens trust and collaboration. That's the power of detachment. It frees you from emotional reactivity, allowing you to act with intention and wisdom. Detachment isn't about ignoring your emotions, it's about observing them without letting them dictate your behavior. The Stoics referred to this practice as separating impressions from reality. Epictetus taught that when events occur, we experience them twice, first through an initial impression, the raw emotion or instinct, and then through our judgment of that impression. For instance, the moment you feel anger is the initial impression, but the judgment whether you fuel that anger, let it control you, or let it pass is entirely within your power. Emotional detachment is the skill of pausing between these two stages, giving yourself the space to choose your response rather than be carried away by the first wave of feeling. Let's make this practical. One effective exercise to cultivate emotional detachment is something the Stoics practiced and encouraged: observing your emotions like an outsider. The next time you feel a strong emotion, whether it's frustration, anxiety, or anger, pause for a moment and silently acknowledge it. Try naming it: I feel frustrated, or I notice anxiety. This simple act of labeling creates a sense of distance between you and the emotion. Instead of becoming consumed by it, you become an observer of it. Then ask yourself, what is this emotion trying to tell me? Is reacting right now the best course of action, or would waiting give me more clarity? By doing this, you shift from reacting on autopilot to responding with awareness. Another exercise you can try comes directly from Marcus Aurelius, who often reflected on the impermanence of emotions. When you feel overwhelmed, remind yourself that emotions, like passing storms, are temporary. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." By recognizing that emotions come and go, you can resist the urge to act impulsively during their peak. This also empowers you to maintain your composure when others are reactive. Your calmness, rooted in detachment, will naturally influence those around you. People tend to follow those who remain steady under pressure. Consider how emotional detachment can play out in a real-world scenario. Picture a negotiation where one party loses their temper, raising their voice and making accusations. The natural response might be to mirror their behavior, to meet anger with anger. But by practicing detachment, you can pause, observe their outburst without internalizing it, and respond calmly with facts or solutions. This not only keeps the situation from escalating, but also subtly shifts the dynamic. Your emotional steadiness draws respect and often compels others to de-escalate their own reactions. Influence, then, emerges not from shouting louder, but from demonstrating control over yourself. The truth is, emotional reactivity often creates more friction than progress. By freeing yourself from the need to react in the moment, you position yourself as someone who is thoughtful, composed, and trustworthy, qualities that naturally attract others to your perspective. Emotional detachment isn't about being disconnected, it's about being in control. Practice observing your emotions without judgment, and watch as this quiet mastery transforms not only your interactions but also your ability to navigate life with clarity and purpose. Let's shift gears to something deceptively simple, yet incredibly powerful: the art of listening. In a world that often prioritizes talking, commanding, and asserting opinions, the act of truly listening has become a rarity. Yet it's one of the most effective tools for influence. Why? Because listening builds trust, it fosters respect, and it shows others that you value their perspective. The Stoics, who believed in the power of reason and mutual understanding, knew this well. Epictetus famously said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." At first glance, this might seem like common sense, but think about how many times we let conversations turn into competitions to be heard. Often, we're not really listening, we're just waiting for our turn to speak, formulating our response before the other person has even finished. True listening, the kind that creates influence, is about setting your own ego aside and making space for the person in front of you. Consider this: when we feel unheard, we instinctively shut down. We grow defensive, frustrated, or even disengaged. But when someone genuinely listens to us, when they reflect back what we've said, validate our feelings, or ask thoughtful questions, we feel respected. We feel understood, and here's the key: we become more open to their perspective in return. Influence doesn't come from overpowering someone with logic or forcing your viewpoint onto them. It comes from creating a foundation of trust, and listening is the cornerstone of that foundation. Let's bring this idea to life with a modern, everyday example resolving a disagreement. Imagine you're in a heated discussion with a friend about something that matters to both of you. Maybe it's a decision about a shared project or a difference in opinion on how to handle a tricky situation. The natural impulse might be to push your point harder, to prove why your perspective is correct. But how often does that actually work? More often than not, it leads to more resistance as the other person feels pressured to defend their stance. Instead, try this: pause, take a step back, and ask them to explain their perspective fully. Then really listen. Don't interrupt, don't jump to conclusions, and don't prepare your counter-argument. Instead, focus on understanding. As they speak, reflect their points back to them. For example, you might say, "What I'm hearing is that this decision feels risky to you because we don't have all the information yet. Is that right?" This small act of acknowledging their perspective does 2 things. It shows them you're paying attention and that you respect their viewpoint. Once they feel understood, they're more likely to lower their defenses and genuinely consider what you have to say. This approach doesn't just work in personal disagreements, it's a game changer in professional settings too. Think about a leader who listens intently to their team before making decisions. Such a leader doesn't just command respect, they earn it. By understanding their team's concerns, they can address them more effectively and create solutions that feel collaborative rather than imposed. Over time, this builds loyalty and trust, making their influence far-reaching and deeply rooted. But listening isn't just about practical outcomes, it's also an opportunity for personal growth. When we listen to others, we expose ourselves to new perspectives, ideas, and ways of thinking. The Stoics valued this highly, seeing every interaction as an opportunity to learn. It's humbling to recognize that no matter how much we know, there's always more to discover from the perspectives of others. If we're doing all the talking, we're closing ourselves off to that wisdom. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you're in a conversation, especially one where you feel the urge to win, practice active listening instead. Don't just hear the words, try to understand the emotions, motivations, and reasoning behind them. Reflect on what's being said without rushing to respond. You might be surprised at how the dynamic shifts. Not only will the other person feel valued, but you'll also gain a clearer picture of the situation, empowering you to respond in a way that's both thoughtful and impactful. At its core, listening is about more than just hearing words. It's about being present, creating connection, and showing that you care. And in a world where so many voices go unheard, this simple act can be a superpower. As Epictetus reminds us, true wisdom comes not from speaking, but from listening. So, the next time you want to influence someone, start by doing the one thing most people overlook: listen. Have you ever noticed how some of the most influential figures in history often say the least? There's a quiet power in silence, one that the Stoics deeply understood. Silence isn't just the absence of speech. It's a deliberate choice to observe, reflect, and respond with intention rather than impulse. In a world that often rewards those who speak the loudest or the fastest, the ability to pause, to hold back, and to choose your words carefully can set you apart in profound ways. Consider this: when you speak impulsively, driven by emotion or the pressure to fill a moment of quiet, how often does it actually strengthen your position? For many of us, those moments of reactive speech lead to regret, saying something we didn't truly mean, revealing more than we intended, or undermining our credibility. The Stoics urged caution here. Epictetus reminds us, let silence be your goal for the most part. Say only what is necessary and be brief about it. This practice isn't about suppressing your voice. It's about ensuring that what you do say carries weight and purpose. History gives us countless examples of how thoughtful silence can wield remarkable influence. Take Abraham Lincoln, for instance, a leader known for his measured approach to communication. In tense meetings or debates, Lincoln would often stay quiet, fully absorbing what others had to say before offering his own perspective. His silence wasn't a sign of passivity. It was a deliberate strategy, one that allowed him to understand the room, think critically, and speak with clarity when the time was right. This silence gave his words added power because when he finally spoke, people listened. He had taken the time to think, to choose his words wisely, and to engage with intention. On a more modern note, think about leaders or colleagues you admire. Chances are they're not the ones dominating every conversation or speaking just to fill the silence. Instead, they're the ones who listen, absorb, and deliver thoughtful insights that guide the group forward. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's presence. It signals that they're paying attention, processing information, and waiting for the right moment to contribute something meaningful. Now, let's turn this reflection inward. How often have you found yourself regretting words spoken in haste, a rushed response in an argument, a thoughtless comment in a meeting, or even sharing too much out of nervousness? In many of these moments, speaking without thought weakens your position. It creates opportunities for misunderstanding, reveals vulnerabilities unnecessarily, or simply diminishes the impact of your message. On the other hand, holding silent, even for just a moment longer, allows you to regain control, consider your words, and choose how to engage deliberately. This isn't to say you should remain silent indefinitely. The Stoics didn't argue for retreating from the conversation entirely, but instead for a balance between speaking and silence. A pause before speaking can serve as a moment of clarity. It gives you time to evaluate whether your words will contribute to the situation or simply add noise. And when you do decide to speak, the pause ensures your words come from a place of thoughtfulness rather than emotional reaction. Think of silence as a tool, not a void. It's the space where ideas are formed, emotions are tempered, and understanding is built. Silence gives you the upper hand because it often disarms others. In heated exchanges, when one party remains calm and quiet, it shifts the dynamic. The silence leaves space for the other person to reflect or even reconsider. It's not about withholding information to manipulate, it's about guiding the interaction with intention and poise. So, here's a question for you to ponder the next time you're in a conversation, especially one that feels emotionally charged or high stakes. What would happen if you stayed silent just a little longer? What could you learn by listening instead of rushing to respond? And when you do speak, are your words necessary, meaningful, and aligned with your intentions? The Stoics teach us that strength lies not in filling every void with sound, but in knowing when silence can say more than words ever could. Resilience is a quiet but profound form of persuasion. When someone sees you face adversity with strength, grace, and determination, they can't help but be inspired. It's a human instinct to admire those who endure challenges without succumbing to despair, and it's through this admiration that influence takes root. The Stoics understood this deeply. To them, resilience wasn't just about surviving hardship. It was about enduring in a way that set an example for others, a way that said, "This is how you face the storm." Marcus Aurelius offers a timeless reminder of this in Meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This quote encapsulates the Stoic view of resilience. Life will hand us difficulties, illness, failure, loss, but it's our response to these events that determines our character. And in leading ourselves through hardship, we unconsciously lead others, showing them what is possible, even when circumstances seem impossible. Think of someone like Nelson Mandela. He endured 27 years of imprisonment under unjust circumstances, facing isolation and physical hardship. But instead of allowing bitterness or anger to consume him, Mandela emerged from that experience with a vision of reconciliation and unity. He demonstrated resilience not just by surviving, but by transforming his suffering into a source of strength and influence. His steadfastness inspired millions, not through fiery speeches or aggressive tactics, but through sheer persistence, dignity, and grace under pressure. He became a living example of how unyielding resilience can change not just one life, but entire nations. This kind of resilience works on a micro level too. For instance, think about someone in your own life, a coworker, a mentor, or a friend who has faced a significant challenge, yet carried themselves with unwavering composure. Perhaps it was a colleague who navigated a difficult project despite setbacks, or a family member who handled personal tragedy with quiet strength. Their ability to keep going not only earned your respect, but also likely encouraged you to face your own challenges with more courage. This is the essence of resilience as persuasion. It communicates strength without words and inspires action without force. But let's be clear, resilience doesn't mean pretending things are easy or denying the pain of adversity. Resilience is about acknowledging the hardship while refusing to let it define you. It's about showing others that challenges, no matter how daunting, can be endured and even overcome. When you embody this mindset, you give others permission to do the same. Your actions become a guidepost for those who may be struggling to find their own way forward. One powerful way to cultivate this resilient influence is by embracing the Stoic principle of seeing obstacles as opportunities. Marcus Aurelius reflected on this when he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. To the Stoic, a challenge is not merely something to survive. It's something to learn from, to grow through, and to ultimately turn into a path forward. When you approach difficulties with this mentality, not as setbacks but as stepping stones, you inspire others to reframe their struggles in the same way. Take, for example, the story of J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. Before becoming one of the most successful authors in history, she faced rejection after rejection from publishers. She was a single mother living on welfare and struggling to make ends meet. Yet she persevered, refusing to give up on her dream. Today, her story isn't just about literary success, it's a testament to resilience. Her journey has motivated countless individuals to keep pursuing their goals, even when the odds are stacked against them. Resilience, then, isn't just a personal quality, it's a form of silent leadership. When people witness your ability to endure and keep moving forward, they don't just admire you, they begin to believe that resilience is possible for them too. So, the next time you face hardship, remember that how you endure doesn't just define you, it may also inspire and influence those around you in ways you may never fully realize. Have you ever had a moment where a simple thank you completely changed the tone of a conversation? Maybe it softened an argument, strengthened a connection, or made someone feel truly appreciated. Gratitude, though often understated, is one of the most subtle yet transformative tools we have for fostering positive relationships and building influence. And while it might seem small, its impact is anything but. Gratitude shifts the dynamic between people in a profound way. When you express genuine appreciation, you're telling the other person, "I see you. I value what you've done." This recognition isn't just polite, it taps into something fundamental about human nature, the universal need to feel acknowledged and respected. Gratitude nurtures trust, dissolves tension, and creates an atmosphere where collaboration and understanding can flourish. And in doing so, it subtly shapes how others view you and respond to you. Think about a time you worked hard on something but weren't acknowledged for your efforts. It stings, doesn't it? Now flip that. Remember when someone took the time to recognize your contribution, no matter how small. That simple moment of gratitude likely strengthened your connection to that person and even motivated you to continue giving your best. Gratitude doesn't just encourage, it reinforces relationships and inspires loyalty. There's a powerful story that illustrates this. During the Second World War, U.S. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, known for his tact and leadership, made it a point to regularly thank the soldiers and staff under his command. In one instance, he wrote a heartfelt letter to the troops before D-Day, expressing his deep appreciation for their courage and sacrifice. Despite the immense pressure he was under, that small act of gratitude solidified the trust and morale of those around him. It was a reminder that leadership isn't just about commands, it's about connection. And gratitude is one of the simplest, most effective ways to create that bond. But gratitude isn't just about grand gestures or big moments. It's in the everyday, seemingly minor interactions. The quick thanks to a coworker who stayed late to help, the handwritten note to a mentor who offered guidance, or the kind words to a friend who just listened when you needed it most. These small acts compound over time, strengthening your influence by showing others they matter to you. Here's something to think about. How often do you express gratitude in your everyday life? Not the obligatory thanks in an email, but real, thoughtful appreciation. Do you take a moment to tell someone how much you value their effort, their support, or even just their presence? If not, what's holding you back? Too often, we assume gratitude is implied, that people know we appreciate them. But unspoken gratitude doesn't have the same power as taking the time to say it out loud or show it through our actions. The beauty of gratitude is in its simplicity. It doesn't require wealth, status, or power to offer thanks. It simply requires awareness. When you practice gratitude, you're not only lifting someone else, you're also cultivating a mindset that focuses on abundance rather than lack. And this mindset is magnetic. People gravitate toward those who make them feel valued, creating a cycle of positivity and respect. Gratitude also has a way of diffusing tension. Imagine a conflict, perhaps at work or in a personal relationship where emotions are running high. What happens if, in the midst of that tension, you authentically acknowledge the other person's effort or good intentions? Saying something as simple as, "I really do appreciate all the work you've put into this," can disarm defensiveness and open the door to collaboration. Gratitude creates a bridge in moments where walls seem to be building. So take a moment and reflect. Is there someone in your life right now who deserves your gratitude? Someone whose efforts, kindness, or support you might have overlooked? Consider how expressing that gratitude could strengthen your relationship with them, not in a superficial way, but in a way that builds trust and mutual respect. As the Stoics might remind us, life is fleeting, and the people around us will not always be here. Marcus Aurelius warns us not to take anything for granted, reminding us of the impermanence of everything we hold dear. Gratitude is how we honor the present and those who share it with us, and in doing so, we not only enrich their lives but our own. Let's talk about acceptance, not as a passive surrender, but as one of the most powerful tools for navigating life and, surprisingly, for influencing others as well. At first glance, acceptance might seem like giving up or stepping back, but in reality, it's the opposite. True acceptance, as the Stoics saw it, is not about resignation, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing what's within your control, what isn't, and adapting to reality instead of fighting against it. And in doing so, you create a sense of harmony that influences those around you without any need for force. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, captured this concept perfectly when he said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This idea forms the foundation of what we can call graceful adaptability, the ability to accept what you cannot change and respond constructively to what you can. It's an approach that not only reduces resistance in your own life, but also subtly shifts the energy of those around you. There's a quiet strength in someone who can face unexpected twists with composure, a strength that others can't help but notice and be influenced by. Imagine this scenario. You're leading a team on an important project. Midway through, a vendor pulls out unexpectedly, or a critical piece of the plan falls apart. It's frustrating, no doubt, but let's consider two possible responses. One, you resist reality. You focus on what should have happened, vent your frustrations, and let the unexpected derail the team's momentum. This reaction might feel justified, but it creates tension, increases stress, and makes it harder for your team to move forward. Now, take the second approach. You accept the situation. You acknowledge the setback without judgment. This is what has happened. Now, what can we do next? By focusing on adaptation instead of resistance, you set the tone for everyone else to follow. Your composure keeps the team grounded and solutions-oriented, and your willingness to accept and adapt inspires others to do the same. This is where acceptance becomes a form of influence. When you show that you can face reality without resistance, others are more likely to collaborate, problem solve, and remain calm under pressure. Why? Because acceptance creates harmony. It's like a river flowing around a rock. It doesn't stop or waste energy trying to move the rock. It simply finds a way forward. This mindset quietly demonstrates resilience and leadership, and people naturally gravitate toward those who can guide them through turbulent times with a steady hand. It's worth noting, though, that acceptance doesn't mean you have to agree with everything that happens. You're allowed to feel disappointed, frustrated, or even upset when things go wrong. But acceptance is about choosing where to focus your energy. Instead of getting stuck in, "Why did this happen?" or "This isn't fair," you shift to "What's next?" That shift not only frees you from unnecessary suffering, but also creates a ripple effect for those around you. Let's tie this back to Epictetus' teachings. He frequently encouraged his students to embrace what cannot be changed, not as a form of weakness but as the ultimate strength. He used the analogy of life as a play. Remember that you are an actor in a play, which is as the playwright wants it to be, short if he wants it short, long if he wants it long. In other words, you don't control the script, but you do control how you play your role. By gracefully accepting the circumstances given to you, you focus on performing your part well, no matter what unfolds. This perspective shifts your energy from resistance to action, from frustration to flow. Acceptance also frees you from the emotional drain of resisting reality. Think about how much energy is wasted wishing things were different, replaying events in your mind, or arguing with circumstances you can't change. Reclaim that energy by accepting what is. From there, you can channel your focus into adapting, finding solutions, and moving forward. This clarity and calmness will not go unnoticed. It's a rare quality that naturally draws others to follow your lead. So the next time life throws you an unexpected curveball, pause. Acknowledge what's happening without judgment. Ask yourself, what is within my control? Then turn your attention there. Not only will this reduce your own stress and frustration, but it will also subtly influence others to approach challenges with the same grace and resilience. Acceptance isn't about giving up, it's about moving forward. And when you do that, you bring others along with you. Integrity is the foundation on which genuine respect and influence are built. While strategies and clever words might sway opinions momentarily, they rarely leave a lasting impact. What truly earns the trust and admiration of others is consistency, living in alignment with your values, even when it's inconvenient or difficult. Integrity isn't about perfection, it's about striving to do what's right, even when no one is watching. It's in those moments of quiet conviction where influence begins to take root. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, believed strongly in the power of moral character. He wrote, "I judge you unfortunate because you have never lived through misfortune." You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you. What Seneca is saying here is that integrity is proven not in times of ease, but in moments of challenge. When circumstances test your values, how you respond reveals your true character, and it's in those decisive moments that others begin to take notice. Let's consider an example of integrity in action, one drawn from history. During apartheid in South Africa, Nelson Mandela endured decades of imprisonment. He lived in conditions that would have crushed the resolve of most people. Yet, throughout those 27 years, Mandela never wavered in his commitment to equality, justice, and forgiveness. When he finally gained his freedom, he didn't seek vengeance or harbor resentment toward those who had oppressed him. Instead, he chose reconciliation, even forming partnerships with some of the very people who had been his adversaries. That unwavering commitment to his principles, even when it would have been easier to act out of anger or bitterness, is what cemented Mandela as a global symbol of integrity and moral leadership. People followed him not because he demanded it, but because his actions reflected the values he held dear. His integrity resonated deeply, inspiring trust and loyalty. This isn't just a lesson for leaders in history, it's a principle we can all live by. Consider your own life and the subtle ways integrity influences your relationships. Have you ever worked with someone who always followed through on their promises, even when it meant extra effort on their part? or perhaps you've had a friend who told you the truth even when it was difficult for you to hear. Those moments of unwavering honesty and reliability naturally build respect. Integrity, after all, isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small, consistent choices you make every day, showing up when you say you will, staying true to your word, and doing the right thing even when no one's keeping score. But what happens when integrity isn't there? Well, the absence of it is just as powerful. A lack of integrity erodes trust instantly. Think about a leader who preaches fairness but plays favorites, or someone who promises accountability but always deflects blame. These inconsistencies don't just tarnish their credibility, they weaken their ability to influence others. Without integrity, even the most persuasive words and actions ring hollow. Living with integrity may not always be the easiest path. You might face criticism, misunderstandings, or even pushback for staying true to your principles. But in the long run, it's what earns the deepest respect, and with that respect comes authentic influence. People respect those who are consistent, who stand for something, and who act with courage when the stakes are high. So here's a question to reflect on. What values truly matter to you, and are you living in alignment with them, even when it's difficult? Because as the Stoics would remind us, integrity isn't just about how others see you, it's about how you see yourself. And when you live with integrity, your actions will speak louder than any words ever could, naturally drawing others toward you. Let's talk about control, or more specifically, the surprising freedom and influence that come when you let go of the need to control others. It's natural to want things to go a certain way. At work, at home, or in relationships, we often feel that if we can just keep things under our thumb, if we can manage every detail, everything will turn out fine. But here's the paradox: the tighter we try to hold on, the more things tend to slip through our fingers. Instead of inspiring trust, excessive control creates resistance. Instead of fostering collaboration, it breeds resentment. And instead of building true influence, it weakens our ability to lead. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminds us, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. In other words, by forcing control over others, we close the door to their growth and their contributions. We assume our way is best, but in doing so, we stifle creativity, destroy trust, and limit what's possible. Letting go of control doesn't mean becoming passive or indifferent. It's about trusting others and creating space for them to grow, make mistakes, and take ownership. Take the modern example of micromanaging in the workplace. Picture a manager who insists on being involved in every single decision their team makes, from the smallest tasks to the major projects. On the surface, their intention might seem good. They want to ensure things run smoothly. But what's the reality? Micromanaging sends a clear message: I don't trust you. Over time, the team becomes disengaged, hesitant, and unwilling to take initiative. They might even start waiting for constant direction instead of finding solutions themselves. This need for control, ironically, leaves the manager with more work to do and a team that operates below its potential. Now contrast that with a leader who gives their team autonomy. This leader sets clear expectations, provides guidance when needed, but ultimately steps back and trusts the team to execute. When someone makes a mistake, instead of swooping in with criticism, they use it as a learning moment, asking questions like, "What do you think we could do differently next time?" This approach doesn't just grow the individual, it grows the entire team. And here's the magic: the leader who relinquishes control ends up with more loyal, capable, and motivated people, because trust creates accountability. People work harder when they feel trusted and valued, not when they feel scrutinized. The same principle applies in our personal relationships. Think of a parent who constantly hovers over their child, dictating every choice, from what they should major in to what hobbies they should pursue. While the parent may believe they're helping their child succeed, the unintended message is clear. I don't believe you can figure this out on your own. Over time, this can erode the child's confidence and independence, but when a parent steps back, offers guidance, and trusts their child to navigate challenges, it fosters resilience, creativity, and self-reliance. Letting go of control is often uncomfortable, especially if you're used to handling everything yourself. But here's something to consider. What are you really trying to control? Is it another person's decision, their behavior, or maybe their approval of you? And what might happen if you stepped back? What would happen if you trusted them to rise to the occasion, even if mistakes were part of the process? Relinquishing control doesn't mean you stop caring or that you leave everything to chance. It means focusing on what you can actually influence, your own actions, your own responses, and letting others take responsibility for theirs. This shift not only relieves the pressure you put on yourself, but it also empowers those around you. It creates an environment where trust can grow, and with trust comes deeper relationships and greater collaboration. So, take a moment to reflect. Are there areas in your life where you're holding on too tightly? Maybe it's a project at work, a dynamic in your family, or even the way you interact with friends. What would happen if you stepped back, trusted the people around you, and let go of that need to control every outcome? It's a small shift, but it can lead to extraordinary results, not just for you, but for everyone you influence along the way. Have you ever noticed how a single, well-placed question can completely change the direction of a conversation? It's fascinating, isn't it? While the world often rewards those who have all the answers, there's an underrated power in those who ask the right questions. Curiosity, when practiced deliberately, is one of the most subtle yet transformative ways to influence others. It doesn't command, it doesn't demand, and it certainly doesn't manipulate. Instead, it invites, it opens doors to understanding, diffuses defensiveness, and fosters a kind of collaboration that feels natural and genuine. Curiosity disarms conflict in a way that statements rarely can. When emotions run high and conversations become tense, our instincts often push us to defend, justify, or persuade. But what if, instead of reacting, you slowed down and asked a question? Not a rhetorical one designed to prove a point, but a genuine question rooted in the desire to understand. It shifts the energy entirely. When you approach someone with curiosity, it signals that you're not there to argue or impose your perspective, but to explore theirs. Let's take an example. Imagine you're in a disagreement with a friend over an important decision. Maybe one of you feels strongly about taking a particular approach while the other sees things differently. The natural reaction might be to dig in, defend your view, or try to convince them why you're right. But what happens if instead you pause and say, "I'm curious, what makes this so important to you?" Or, "Can you help me understand what you're worried about here?" Questions like these do two things. First, they show the other person that you care about their perspective, which instantly lowers their defenses. And second, they give you valuable insight, not just into their position, but into their motivations, fears, and values. You learn what's driving their stance, and this opens the door to finding common ground. What started as a conflict becomes a dialogue. This approach works so well because curiosity transforms the dynamic of power. Instead of engaging in a head-to-head debate, you're shifting into a collaborative exploration. The conversation becomes less about winning and more about understanding each other. And when people feel heard, they're far more likely to open up to your perspective in return. Curiosity creates a sense of equality. It's no longer about who is right or wrong, but about solving the problem together. Curiosity also deepens relationships in everyday interactions. Think about how often we coast through conversations on autopilot, too focused on our own thoughts to truly engage with what the other person is saying. Now imagine bringing an intentional curiosity into those moments. When your coworker mentions a challenge they're facing, instead of offering advice right away, you might ask, "What do you think would help most in that situation?" When a friend shares some exciting news, instead of just reacting, you could ask, "What are you most looking forward to about this?" These small shifts aren't just polite, they signal genuine interest, building trust and opening the door to deeper, more meaningful connections. Here's something to reflect on. Do you practice curiosity in your daily interactions? When was the last time you asked someone a question with no agenda, no judgment, and no desire to steer the conversation, but simply to learn? And more importantly, how often do you listen not just to respond, but to truly understand? The next time you find yourself in a conversation, whether it's a casual chat with a friend, a professional setting, or even a disagreement, experiment with curiosity. Ask a thoughtful question, tune into the other person's response. Watch how the energy shifts, how walls come down, and how bridges begin to form. You might be surprised at how much influence you can have simply by showing genuine interest in someone else's perspective. Because curiosity isn't just about learning, it's about connecting. And through connection, influence emerges naturally. Let's delve into the Stoic practice of deliberation, a discipline that reminds us to pause, reflect, and patiently weigh our decisions before taking action. In a world that often promotes speed and urgency, deliberation might seem like a luxury we can't afford. But as the Stoics believed, slowing down in the moments that matter most doesn't just prevent mistakes, it also allows us to subtly guide outcomes in a way that aligns with our values and long-term goals. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic thinker, captured the essence of this practice when he wrote, "No action should be undertaken without aim, or other than in conformity with a principle affirming the art of life." In other words, every decision we make should be intentional, driven by purpose, and grounded in careful thought. To understand the true power of deliberation, consider this example. Imagine someone who's navigating a career decision. Let's say they've been offered a new job, one that comes with a higher salary and more prestige, but also significant sacrifices, such as longer hours and less time with family. The impulsive choice might be to jump at the opportunity, swept up in the allure of recognition and financial gain. But without deliberation, this decision could lead to unintended consequences: burnout, strained relationships, or regret over lost time with loved ones. Now, a Stoic approach would look very different. Before making the decision, they would pause. They'd take the time to reflect on their priorities, asking questions like, "Is this opportunity aligned with my core values?" They might weigh the pros and cons over several days, considering not just the immediate benefits but the long-term implications. By reframing the situation and resisting the urge to act quickly, they might ultimately decide that their well-being and family time outweigh the benefits of the new role. Or perhaps they still take the new job, but only after resolving to set boundaries to protect their personal life. Either way, the deliberation ensures the choice is intentional, not reactive, and the outcome is more likely to reflect their true priorities. This practice of deliberation is not just about avoiding bad decisions. It's also about harnessing the subtle power of patience to guide others. When you're the calm, measured voice in a group facing an important choice, your presence naturally influences the people around you. Take a team brainstorming session as an example. Everyone might be rushing to finalize an idea, eager to meet a deadline, but by suggesting, "Let's take a moment to explore a few alternatives before committing," you encourage the group to pause and consider a wider range of possibilities. That moment of reflection might lead to a far better solution than the one reached in haste. Deliberation, then, doesn't only benefit you, it also creates space for better thinking and collaboration. The Stoics also teach us that deliberation is a shield against impulsive emotions that can cloud our judgment. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself to step back and assess his own reactions. If you are doing something in accordance with right reason, never avoid being seen to do it. But if you are not, recoil from the act itself, ashamed to pursue it. By taking the time to examine whether an action aligns with what's rational and right, we create a buffer between impulse and response. This practice helps us resist the pull of anger, fear, or greed, allowing us to make choices rooted in clarity and integrity. So, how can we cultivate deliberation in our daily lives? It begins with building a habit of pausing before making decisions, especially in moments of pressure. Ask yourself, what's driving me to act? Is this an emotional response, or have I considered all the relevant factors? What are the potential long-term consequences of this choice? Even just a few seconds of reflection can prevent unnecessary mistakes and lead to wiser outcomes. Deliberation, when practiced consistently, becomes a quiet superpower. It enables you to act with purpose, maintain composure, and subtly guide situations without force. And in a world that often values speed over substance, your ability to slow down and think deeply will set you apart, not just as someone who achieves results, but as someone who does so with wisdom and intention. How often have you found yourself fixated on outcomes, whether it's getting a promotion, achieving a specific goal, or trying to win someone's approval? And how often has that focus left you frustrated, drained, or even questioning your choices? It's a common trap, isn't it? In a society that often measures success by results, it's easy to chase outcomes relentlessly, believing that they'll bring fulfillment or validation. But what if true influence, fulfillment, and even success aren't found in the outcomes themselves, but in the values you hold along the way? The Stoics had a profound understanding of this concept. While the world around them often celebrated external achievements, wealth, fame, power, the Stoics shifted the focus inward, asking a simple yet transformative question: who do I want to be in this moment? They believed that lasting influence comes not from what you achieve, but from how you show up, your character, your principles, and your ability to stay true to them no matter the circumstances. Seneca put it powerfully when he said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more who is poor." This isn't just about material possessions, it's about how an unending focus on outcomes creates a sense of lack. The Stoics remind us that chasing results we cannot control often leaves us at the mercy of forces outside ourselves. So why focus on values over outcomes? For one, outcomes are unpredictable. You could pour your heart and soul into a project only for external factors, things entirely beyond your control, to disrupt everything. If your self-worth is tied solely to the result, this unpredictability can lead to disappointment, frustration, and even a sense of failure. But when you focus instead on the values that guide your actions, whether it's integrity, perseverance, kindness, or excellence, you gain something much more stable. You may not always control the outcome, but you can always control how you show up, and that is where true power lies. Let's consider an example. Imagine two people working toward a major goal, like launching their own business. The first person is entirely outcome-driven. Their sole focus is on hitting certain revenue figures or gaining public recognition. They cut corners, compromise their values, and measure every decision by whether it brings them closer to these results. The second person, meanwhile, is guided by the value of creating something meaningful. They prioritize quality, treat their team and customers fairly, and remain committed to their principles even when things get tough. Now, who do you think builds lasting influence? Even if both businesses succeed, the second person's integrity and commitment to values lay the foundation for trust, respect, and a reputation that endures long after the numbers fade. Focusing on values over outcomes also has a way of freeing you from unnecessary stress. When you're driven solely by results, every setback can feel catastrophic. Every moment of uncertainty becomes a source of anxiety. But when you let your values guide you, you create a sense of steadiness. You know that no matter what happens externally, you can walk away with your principles intact. And this steadiness, this ability to stay grounded, is a quality that others deeply respect. It's the kind of influence that doesn't need to be shouted or demanded, it's simply felt. So let me ask you this: how often has focusing exclusively on outcomes left you feeling frustrated or out of alignment with yourself? And what might happen if instead you shifted your focus to your values? The truth is, results come and go, but your character is what leaves a lasting impression. As Seneca reminds us, it's not the fleeting outcomes of life that define us, it's the virtues we cultivate along the way. Because when you focus on what's within your control, your values, your actions, you not only become more resilient, but you also inspire others to do the same. And that, in the end, is the kind of influence that truly lasts. Letting go of ego is one of the most liberating and transformative steps toward building authentic connections and wielding meaningful influence. Ego, in many ways, can act as an invisible barrier, one that distorts how we see ourselves, how we perceive others, and ultimately how we interact with the world. The Stoics understood this deeply, viewing ego not as a source of strength but as a source of vulnerability. It's the kind of vulnerability that makes us defensive when criticized, unwilling to admit fault, and desperate to cling to control or approval. The irony, of course, is that the more we act from ego, the weaker our influence becomes. Genuine trust and respect don't come from pretending to be infallible. They come from showing humility, self-awareness, and a willingness to grow. Epictetus teaches us, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. What he's saying here is that growth and connection require us to release the need to constantly protect our image. It's only when we let go of the fear of being judged, or the obsession with appearing right, that we can truly connect with others on a deeper level. Let's explore this idea through a relatable example. Imagine a leader at work who makes a mistake, a misjudgment in strategy that costs the team valuable time. Now, the ego-driven response would be to deflect blame, make excuses, or even double down on the error in an attempt to save face. But what does that do? It erodes trust. The team begins to question the leader's integrity because this unwillingness to admit fault signals insecurity, not strength. On the other hand, picture the same leader acknowledging the mistake openly. I misjudged the situation and I want to take accountability for that. Here's what I've learned and here's how we're going to course correct. This act of humility doesn't weaken the leader's authority, it strengthens it. Admitting fault in this way demonstrates self-awareness, builds trust, and sets the tone for a culture where growth and accountability are prioritized over appearances. This kind of humility also fosters authentic relationships. When we let go of ego, we stop seeing other people as competitors or threats to our image. Instead, we see them for who they truly are, fellow human beings with their own strengths, challenges, and perspectives. Think about a friend or colleague who is genuinely self-aware and open about their imperfections. They don't pretend to have all the answers or feel the need to dominate every conversation. Instead, they listen, admit when they're wrong, and approach situations with curiosity rather than defensiveness. You likely respect them not despite their humility but because of it. Their lack of ego creates a sense of authenticity that draws people in, making their influence feel natural and genuine. Letting go of ego doesn't mean diminishing yourself or abandoning confidence. It's about separating your self-worth from your need to prove something to others. Ego says, I must always appear strong, right, or superior. Humility, on the other hand, says, I am secure enough in who I am to admit when I'm wrong, to learn from others, and to show vulnerability. This shift doesn't just make you more approachable, it makes you more effective. People are far more likely to trust someone who is honest about their flaws than someone who hides behind the illusion of perfection. In daily life, you can practice shedding ego by embracing moments of discomfort, those times when admitting a mistake or showing vulnerability feels like a threat to your pride. Instead of resisting, lean into it. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I acknowledge this fault or show that I don't know everything? More often than not, you'll realize that the act of letting go is far less frightening than the weight of holding on. Ultimately, freeing yourself from ego creates space for authentic connection and enduring influence. As Epictetus reminds us, true growth requires humility, the willingness to appear imperfect so that we can connect, learn, and lead in a way that earns genuine respect. When you let go of ego, you're no longer trying to control how others see you. Instead, you focus on showing up as your most honest, grounded self, which is far more powerful than any facade your ego could ever create. Let's talk about a type of confidence that's less about projecting power and more about cultivating peace, confidence rooted in non-attachment. This concept might sound counterintuitive at first. After all, don't confidence and attachment go hand in hand? Isn't confidence about being so invested in an outcome that you work tirelessly to achieve it? But Stoicism offers a different perspective. It teaches us that true confidence doesn't come from clinging to a specific result. Instead, it comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you have the strength, clarity, and resilience to handle it. This mindset of non-attachment doesn't just liberate you, it also makes you naturally influential because people are drawn to those who exude calm and certainty without desperation. The Stoics believed that aligning yourself with nature, the natural flow of life, was key to achieving this kind of confidence. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on this, writing, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." What does this mean in practice? It means understanding that life, much like nature itself, is unpredictable. Just as the wind shifts direction or the seasons inevitably change, outcomes in life are not fully within our control. We have influence over our actions, our effort, and our intentions, but the ultimate result of those efforts, that's shaped by countless factors beyond us. The Stoics taught that aligning with nature means accepting this reality rather than resisting it. And from that acceptance comes a deep, unshakable confidence, not in getting what you want, but in your ability to navigate whatever life brings. Picture this in a real-world scenario. Imagine preparing for a job interview for a role you've been dreaming about for years. You polish your resume, practice your responses, and research the company inside and out. Naturally, you feel some anxiety, the stakes feel high. But here's the pivotal shift. Instead of attaching your confidence to whether you land the job, you focus on doing your best in the process. You accept that the outcome is beyond your control. Maybe the company has internal politics that influence hiring decisions. Maybe they're looking for something specific that has nothing to do with your abilities. Whatever the case, you free yourself from the weight of needing a specific result to feel successful. You walk into that interview with a quiet confidence, not because you're sure you'll get the job, but because you know you've prepared thoughtfully, aligned your actions with your values, and can handle any outcome. That energy is magnetic. It's calm, composed, and powerful, and people can feel it. When you cultivate non-attachment, you're no longer grasping or chasing, and this has a profound effect on those around you. Think about it. A person who remains relaxed and composed amidst uncertainty signals strength and security. They're not trying to control or force others to fall in line. They're simply doing their part, staying true to themselves and trusting the process. That kind of presence is rare and deeply influential. People gravitate toward individuals who radiate this sense of self-assurance because it's a reflection of something we all desire: peace of mind. So, how can you start practicing non-attachment in your everyday life? Begin with small scenarios. For example, think about a small task or goal you have this week, like sending an important email or completing a difficult assignment. Before you start, take a moment to ask yourself, what's truly in my control here? Focus on those aspects: your effort, clarity, and preparation. Then remind yourself, the outcome is not entirely up to me. I trust myself to handle whatever happens. This simple exercise trains your mind to detach from the result and root your confidence in your process instead. When you embrace confidence in non-attachment, you free yourself from the pressure of controlling what you cannot control. You step into life with a steadiness that not only benefits you but also inspires others. People are drawn to those who can pursue their goals with intention and grace, without losing themselves in the uncertainty of outcomes. And when you live this way, you embody the Stoic ideal of aligning with nature, accepting what comes, letting go of what doesn't, and moving forward with quiet, unshakable confidence. Moderation often gets overlooked in a world that celebrates extremes, whether it's pushing yourself to the limit, chasing after the loudest successes, or giving in to every fleeting impulse. Yet, there's an incredible strength in balance, a quiet power in practicing moderation in our emotions, actions, and desires. It's not the kind of strength that demands attention or dominates a room, but it's the kind that leaves a lasting impression, influencing others simply by example. Think about someone you know or admire who embodies moderation, someone who doesn't overreact in difficult situations, doesn't indulge in excess, and doesn't allow ambition to consume their relationships or well-being. Maybe it's a mentor who always seems grounded, even when faced with challenges, or a friend who knows how to enjoy life's pleasures without overindulging. Their steadiness likely draws you to them. It's not because they're flashy or dramatic, but because their balance creates a sense of trustworthiness and stability. When people practice moderation, they radiate control over their lives, and that's inspiring. Let's look at a historical example. Aristotle, the ancient philosopher, emphasized the concept of the golden mean, the idea that virtue lies in a balance between extremes. Courage, for instance, exists between recklessness and cowardice. Generosity falls between greed and wastefulness. Moderation, then, isn't about denial or deprivation. It's about knowing when enough is enough, when to push forward and when to pull back. It's about the wisdom to act in a way that serves your long-term well-being rather than giving in to short-term desires or impulses. This is the kind of balance that not only improves your own life but subtly sets an example for others. One modern story that illustrates this beautifully is that of Warren Buffett, the legendary investor. Despite his immense wealth, Buffett is known for his simple and balanced lifestyle. He still lives in the modest house he bought decades ago. He avoids the flashy excesses often associated with billionaires. Instead, he focuses his energy on what he values most: his work, his family, and philanthropy. This discipline and sense of moderation aren't just admirable, they teach a powerful lesson. Buffett's balanced approach serves as a reminder that success doesn't mean indulging in every whim or chasing every pleasure, but instead finding fulfillment in focusing on what truly matters. His lifestyle quietly influences those who look up to him, showing that living within moderation isn't about sacrifice, it's about freedom. The same principle applies to our emotions. Think about how moderation in emotional responses can influence the people around you. Picture a scenario where tensions are high, maybe at work or during a family disagreement. When everyone is reacting impulsively, raising their voices or pointing fingers, there's always that one person who remains calm and composed. their steadiness often shifts the entire tone of the situation. By choosing not to overreact, they show others that there's another way to handle stress, one that doesn't escalate conflict but instead creates space for understanding and resolution. That's the subtle yet profound influence of emotional moderation. So, how can you begin practicing this kind of balance in your own life? Start by reflecting on areas where you might struggle with extremes. Is it your emotions? Perhaps you find yourself swinging from intense anger to regret, wishing you'd taken a more measured approach. Or maybe it's in your desires, overworking yourself to the point of burnout or chasing after material things that don't bring lasting happiness. Or it might be your daily habits, overeating, overcommitting, or overindulging in screen time. Moderation isn't about depriving yourself of joy, but about learning when to say, "This is enough." Take a moment to reflect. Where in your life could practicing moderation bring more balance? Maybe it's setting boundaries around your time to avoid burnout. Maybe it's pausing to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting emotionally. Or perhaps it's finding ways to enjoy life's pleasures in a way that feels fulfilling, not excessive. The goal isn't to achieve perfection, it's to cultivate balance little by little. In practicing moderation, you don't just improve your own life, you become an example of steadiness and control that quietly influences those around you. In a world that often glamorizes extremes, balance is its own kind of strength. And when you embody that balance, you don't need to tell others to follow your lead. They'll naturally be drawn to the calm and clarity you exude. As we wrap up, let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've explored. At the heart of Stoicism lies a profound truth. Influence isn't about force or manipulation. It's about mastering yourself, aligning with your values, and cultivating a presence that inspires others naturally. Through patience, we learn to pause, to endure, and to navigate challenges with grace. Through clarity, we see situations as they truly are, separating what's within our control from what isn't. And through self-mastery, we embody the traits we wish to see in others, leading by example rather than words alone. These principles may seem subtle, but their impact is anything but. Influencing others doesn't require grand gestures or constant persuasion. It comes from the way you live, the way you carry yourself, and how you respond to the world around you. When you embody patience in the face of chaos, clarity in times of confusion, and resilience in moments of struggle, you become a beacon for others. People are drawn to those who remain steady, who listen deeply, and who act with intention. This quiet strength is what leaves a lasting impact, its influence that endures. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be." Be one. This quote captures the essence of subtle influence perfectly. Instead of telling others how to act or trying to control outcomes, focus on embodying the virtues you admire. By doing so, you lead not through words but through example. And that's where real influence begins, not with what you say, but with how you live. Now, here's an invitation for you. Take a moment to reflect on your own approach to influence. Are there areas in your life where you could practice more patience? Situations where clarity might help you better understand and connect with others? Or moments where self-mastery could guide you to act in alignment with who you truly want to be? Start small, perhaps by pausing before reacting, or by taking a step back to reframe a challenging situation. These small shifts, rooted in Stoic principles, can create profound changes over time. And if this exploration has resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you plan to apply these ideas in your own life? Share your reflections in the comments below, and let's continue this conversation together. If you're eager to dive deeper into the wisdom of Stoicism and how it can transform your life, consider subscribing. There's so much more to discover on this journey of self-mastery and subtle influence. Remember, the power to influence begins and ends with mastering yourself. And once you do, you'll find that the world responds in ways you never thought possible. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you